And we're back at the Florida Chamber of Commerce's 2024 Legislative Fly-In. Some of you avid listeners might remember this from last year. We did the same thing. We're set up here outside the room where the state's movers and shakers and legislative leaders and cabinet members are addressing the crowd. So stick with us. We'll hear about legislative priorities. Thanks for listening.
You're listening to A Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida.
We're recording this the day after the legislative session began, and I am sitting here with Beth Cicchetti talking about how to pronounce Italian last names. And Beth is the executive director of the Florida Economic Development Council. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us for a few minutes today.
Oh, and thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
2024 legislative session, the Economic Development Council, what are your priorities?
So we're a professional association of about 500 individuals across 250 organizations who practice economic, workforce, and community development all across Florida, 67 counties. So our members may be with a port, with a local county government, they may be working at the municipal level, they may be working in the private sector with a company, a utility, so anybody who really touches those areas of talent and infrastructure development, quality of place for their communities. Mm-hmm. And so we're excited to be hosting a kickoff event for Florida Economic Development Week on January 22nd. And during that week, we'll have a statewide social media campaign where our members will be showcasing their best practices back at home and how we help local communities improve, and we also elevate Florida's global competitiveness. As a strategic partner with the Florida Chamber, I know we're here right now at the Florida Chamber Fly-In. We've been very involved since the inception of the Florida 2030 Blueprint. Mm-hmm. So our members focus on those very high-level elements of growing Florida's GDP, diversifying the state's economy. We've been dependent upon some legacy industries for many, many years.
Agriculture and tourism.
And real estate. Yes.
And real estate, right.
Yes. And so we want to make sure that we're focused on manufacturing. That's a high impact, economic impact to a community if you establish or help grow a manufacturing company, the capital investment they make, the high wage quality career, lifelong right. jobs that are created. So those are areas that we're intently focused on. Florida Commerce released a study in late December, about the state of manufacturing in Florida. So that's a great primer for this conversation, and we just want to make sure that the elements in that study resonate with the members here in the Florida legislature.
I don't know if I'm going to be getting off on a tangent, but I spent a day out in Perry talking to people about the Foley Mill closure. And I was working on a story, and about 2 days after I went out there, I fractured my wrist, and I had to have surgery, and I was unable to follow up on that. And yeah, so I really am curious if, and you talk about, manufacturing and the high quality jobs there. The folks there were very, very, very intent on finding a buyer for that mill so they could keep producing what they were producing, a specialized kind of pulp product.
Yeah.
And those were very high-paying jobs for that area. I drove around and looked at the houses, and they had just had the hurricane come through Idalia. I mean, it was a really double whammy for them. So, but that was a really good example of how manufacturing in a community, a rural community especially, was really beneficial, was really the lifeblood of that community. I don't know what's going to happen there now, But are you, so my question is a sort of complex, but are you focused on, is there a focus on trying to help that area, or is that just as a kind of textbook example of the importance of manufacturing in some of these smaller areas?
So let me see if we can start with the site itself. So yes, there are particular individuals who are focused on the Perry site, and you're right. It has a ton of infrastructure there. There's utilities. There's a certain amount of power, water, wastewater, everything that's already been invested that allows that particular site to be very useful to a future owner, right, and operator. So those types of assets are most definitely being marketed globally to see if there is an end user that would like to come in and take advantage, of those types of assets. In addition, the people who were affected are highly trained individuals, and if they want to stay in that community, they are considered yet another asset that a future user would want to avail themselves of. So those are the types of things that our members will be doing, is they'll be marketing that as a competitive asset for Florida. So yes. Now, in addition, that is an entire endeavor of economic development across Florida, where we are constantly looking for the highest and best use of certain sites that have infrastructure. All the utilities,
Right.
the access to transportation.
Housing?
Correct. So affordable housing.
Right.
Last year, FEDC, is a member of the Sadowski Coalition, was
Okay.
fully behind the Live Local Act.
Right.
We're continuing to follow the act and the different impacts that are occurring with development across the state. We want to make sure that talent can live close to where their work is, right, where their work is.
For sure.
And so then it gets into some of the social issues that we've been talking about today here at the fly-in with regards to childcare and transportation, correct?
Right.
So all of these things affect a good quality trained workforce.
Right.
But, from the standpoint of manufacturing, which could be in a number of industry sectors, whether it's the life sciences, the medical
Yeah.
technologies, the aerospace, aviation, these are all very attainable projects and growth sectors for Florida. From that standpoint, we want to make sure that we're focused on talent development initiatives that are going to help grow these individual sectors. So that's a big push. The governor has included in his budget the Florida Job Growth Grant Fund. It's been a very successful tool in Florida. It allows Floridians to invest in future infrastructure and workforce initiatives that will help grow these targeted industry sectors that will further diversify our economy. When you think about the space industry, and
Right.
you think about the 20 military installations that we have around the state and the great jobs that these entities provide in Florida and how we're a leader globally, we want to be able to make sure that the workforce here, especially young people, right, in middle school, going into high school, understand that these are extremely viable careers, very successful type opportunities, and so we want to make sure that they're understanding where they can go to get the kind of training that they would need.
What's the hottest manufacturing ticket right now?
Well, like I said, manufacturing of components. When you think about Industry 4.0, okay, that's a term where, as you look to the future, what are going to be the impacts on manufacturing, and one of those, when you look back on 3D printing, right?
Right.
How that's kind of started, and for a while it became very like a makerspace type thing. You want to get your kid a 3D printer for the great for science projects, right? To really understand. So, but now through additive manufacturing, it's a way for companies to have more control over the basic elements that they will need in order to develop future solutions. Especially, I'll give you an example, in the aviation aerospace sector. Let's say you're dependent upon a part for a widget, right? And you have to get that from somewhere else. It has to be manufactured somewhere else. Well,
Right.
now through additive manufacturing, you can create that part yourself pretty much on the fly.
Additive manufacturing, that's 3D printing?
And in a very basic sense.
It's
So,
more complicated than
more
that,
complicated
but
than
I'm
that,
going to
yes.
dumb it down for Dara style.
But we're seeing a concerted effort here in Florida to go after a National Science Foundation grant that would help Florida become a hub for additive manufacturing in the southeastern United States. So FEDC is currently socializing this opportunity across the state of Florida. Our members are providing that economic development ecosystem type perspective in partnership with research universities like Florida State, Florida International, University of Central Florida, and collectively we'll be working towards making an application to secure funding to become one of those tech hubs here.
Oh, that's really interesting. If you were going to give your child or grandchild graduating from college, or graduating from high school now, advice on what career to pursue, what would you tell them?
Well, that's what's so great about the manufacturing sector is whether you're the type of individual who wants to continue on your education journey through a four-year university, that research and development piece or that engineering piece would be great for you, and you'd be such a contributor to the targeted sectors in Florida. But by the same token, if you want to go directly into work, there are there's close to 500,000 jobs in manufacturing in Florida, and over 20,000 companies that need you today in terms of your ability to learn on the job, be a good communicator, be part of a team, work together with others, and continue your education on the side. I mean, they're willing to invest in you through the apprenticeship model, which is basically the earn while you learn model.
Right. Well, any other legislative priorities for the next 60 days?
We're very focused on the resiliency of Florida's small businesses. And Florida is the only state that levies a tax on commercial leases.
Right.
And in some cases, businesses are, being taxed on an interbusiness transaction if they have their own real estate, right?
Right.
And so we feel like that is something that could easily be eliminated.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm an interrupter. You're Italian, I'm half Italian. You get it, I'm sure. I believe that the legislature has reduced that tax over the past couple of years, or am I wrong about that?
There have been efforts, and it kind of has to do with how we replenish some of the funds that were expended during the pandemic years.
Okay.
And so it's kind of just back and forth.
Okay.
But the idea of fully eliminating that, so that Florida is not the only state in the union who I think will increase our ranking, our tax ranking. We're currently number one in the Southeast, but we're fourth in the U.S., so I think it just improves our business climate, and it certainly does insulate our small businesses and give them a chance to invest in themselves and grow.
Well, all these people are moving to Florida, and I remember I was sitting here last year talking to some folks, and I think we were still coming out of the pandemic at that point, and there was a lot of where are all the workers? We can't find enough workers. We can't find enough workers. Everywhere you went, you'd see, if you went, which I didn't, but if you went places, we're reducing our hours because the worker situation. Do you see that we're still having a worker shortage now, or what's the current state of that?
I think Florida is a leader in addressing that. It's a national problem, and it's going to come from lower birth rates. I mean, it's something we're all going to experience over the next decade or so. But Florida is addressing it head on. We're investing unprecedented amounts in K-12 education. We're providing a lot of educational freedom, and that allows people to, and we're also doing a lot of promotion around what we talked about earlier, right? Whether you want to go on into a four-year university, whether you want to go to a state college, whether you want to get a certification and go directly into the workforce. There's tons of options in there, and the employers are partners in the process through the apprenticeship models. And so I think those are leading examples of how we're going to solve this problem the best way we can.
My Italian grandfather used to tell all the boys in the family, because he was my grandfather, but he used to tell all the boys in the family, always get a trade. No matter what you do, always have a trade. It's something you can fall back on. And I heard the governor in his State of the State speech yesterday talking quite a bit about all the workforce certifications that Florida, I know that workforce has been one of his priorities since he's taken office, expanding those certifications. And he also, although he went to Yale and Harvard, is always very often says you don't need to go to a four-year degree to get a good job. You can get a trade. So maybe he thinks like my grandfather did. So do you get to travel a lot for your job?
I do, and I enjoy visiting with the 8 economic development regions around the state. As an organization, we have regional directors elected by their peers. So, Northwest, North Central, Northeast, East Central, Tampa Bay, Southwest, South Central, and Southeast. So just a great group of individuals who are going above and beyond their regular daily duties at their organization or business, and dedicating themselves to help leading the coalition of economic developers from their region. Florida is different, right? So whether you're in Pensacola or if you're in Miami,
right,
we all have a unique set of challenges and opportunities for our region, and so collectively they come together as a region and make sure that they're putting their best foot forward in each of these areas we've talked about, whether it's site development, whether it's infrastructure improvements, whether it's talent development. But yeah, they're working together as a region.
Well, Beth Cicchetti, Executive Director of the Florida Economic Development Council, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure chatting with you. Hey, we're back, and we are really lucky to be joined by Derrick McGhee, lobbyist Derrick McGhee. People oftentimes, because my name is Dara Cam, and when I say, hi, I'm Dara Cam, people oftentimes say, hi, Derrick, nice to meet you. So I get called Derrick a lot. So
shame on them.
I know, right? You're a lobbyist. We've known each other quite a while. You go back to Governor Scott's administration?
Even before that, actually, I began under Governor Bush. I was a young kid right out of college, so I wasn't doing anything major. But yeah, and then senior under Governor Scott, so it was pretty fun.
Jeb, I worked for the Palm Beach Post when Jeb was governor, and he called the Palm Beach Post the Palm Beach Pravda. So that was something that I remember. That was thanks to a colleague of mine, Sharish Date, who works for HuffPost now. Anyway, shout out to Sharish. Hey! So we're here at the legislative fly-in, a day after session started. We're recording this. And I just wanted to go over with you. First of all, which firm do you work for?
Yeah, our firm is Johnson & Blanton. It's owned by John Johnson and Travis Blanton.
Right. And what are going to be your legislative priorities for the next 60 days?
Great question. So I'm involved in the Live Healthy Act, which is a big priority of Senate President Pasadomo. We represent psychologists. We represent the Behavioral Health Association. And so that bill has a lot in there. Represent a lot of we have Florida Hospital Association, Advent Health Baycare, Florida Healthcare Association. We're involved in their lobbying as well. And so that bill is major for healthcare. And so we're critically involved in that. Baker Act is heavily involved in that bill as well. And so for the psychologists, which is a priority of theirs, they're included in Live Healthy as well. And so I've been working on that.
Tell me about Baker Act in that bill, because I'm unaware. It's a sweeping legislation, and I wrote about it the day it came out, or Senate President Kathleen Pasadomo, who just passed by here, and Senator Colleen Burton had a little powwow with reporters to talk about some of the details in the bill, but I missed the Baker Act stuff.
Yeah, so the part of the bill for Baker Act is really allowing for psychologists, clinical psychologists, and for psychiatric nurses to be able to provide more assistance to psychiatrists, for example, of involuntary admittance and voluntary discharges. Being able now to look at their criterias. Right now, the statute is silent on who actually can do that outside of psychiatrists and things of that nature. And so because of the shortage in workforce, which is a priority of Live Healthy, the Senate President and her team have been great about looking now at clinical psychologists, looking at psychiatric nurses, looking at their criteria, and allowing them to have more of an opportunity to be involved in Baker acting.
So there's no scope war there?
There's no scope war there. No, and this, it's important to know that clinical psychologists and psychiatric nurses aren't given full Baker Act authority as a psychiatrist would, but they are now being given a lot more opportunity to be able to help out. Again, there's shortages in a lot of parts of the state, especially in rural areas, so this will be very, very helpful, and there's no fight there.
I'm really aware of some of these shortages with psychologists and mental health counselors, and I think that's one of the reasons why the First Lady wanted to expand the use of telehealth for that, right?
Correct.
Wasn't that part of her efforts, especially in Bay County after Michael?
Exactly.
And then now we're recording this the day after Bay County, and I had the Bay County leaders and Representative Griffiths to memorialize the 5-year anniversary of Michael.
And then, yes.
Jackson County got hit by a dahlia. And then yesterday, some of the images from Panama City Beach were just horrible. So I'm imagining that there's going to be, again, those folks are, you maybe have heard me talk about the tree that came through my roof during Hermine, right?
Yeah, I have.
Since you're an avid listener. I know, because it's all about me, right, Derrick?
I love the show, though. This is amazing.
And I lost 24 hours in panic yesterday because I was getting the alerts, the tornado alerts. I had packed a bug out bag. When it rains hard, I start the palpitations. Seriously, it is PTSD. And so yesterday, I really hardly got any work done. I'm not going to lie. My boss won't be hearing this for another week. But that's me. And my house wasn't completely decimated and nothing. I just saw a tree come down, a limb come down yesterday, and no damage to the house. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But it's crippling,
yes,
the kind of panic and fear that you go through when you experience one of these storms. And every time it rains, it storms, and we're seeing these tornadoes, and everything seems like, I don't know if it's getting worse. I'm not a meteorologist.
Yeah. And the trauma is real. And then, as you know, with trauma creates triggers, right? And as you mentioned, when certain weather comes, it triggers memory.
Yeah.
And so, Mariana I represent the Florida Great Northwest, which is the economic incubator of many counties. they're a spinoff as a result of the BP oil spill. So they work
Oh,
very
yeah,
closely
which
with
I also
Triumph.
covered. I lived in
Yeah.
Pensacola for 6 months covering that, yeah.
They work very, very closely with Triumph, but Jackson County and Bay County are part of the footprint.
Right.
So I have a serious heart for those areas, and hearing reports coming from there is always concerning. Right?
I
'Cause
think
they're-
all 3 marinas were damaged,
Exactly.
some like totaled yesterday
Correct.
in Panama City Beach. But the Jackson County folks, they kind of get overlooked when you see a big city and you see the house that's tilted sideways.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
yeah, well, good that we're going to be taking, expanding access to mental health care. I'm a huge proponent of it. Dr. Paul, shout out to Dr. Paul.
Yeah. I'm also working on a bill. I represent the Florida Psychological Association, which are the psychologists. They
Right.
have a bill which is for prescriptive privileges for psychologists.
Oh, now that would be new.
That's a new one. We tried it several years back. And that will be a scope fight.
FMA, I'm sure, is
FMA
going to
and the
be
psychiatry.
hell nah.
Yeah, exactly. The bill has been narrowed down to 8 pages. Again, our focus there has really been about trying to help with the workforce shortage. There is documented a shortage of psychiatrists. So this bill is trying to help in that regard. We understand the concern from the psychiatrists. The bill actually brings them to the table, but and every psychologist wouldn't qualify for prescriptive privileges. They would have to go back and get additional education to even be considered. The Board of Psychology of the Department of Health would ultimately have a lot of the authority to be able to recognize and permit this. But this is something we're working on. It will be a turf war, I expect it. But
Sure.
this is, again, in regards to just the mental health fight that we're seeing in that regard.
Is this the first year you're running that bill?
This is the first year in the last 2. We did it in the past when Senator Brandis was here. He was our sponsor for 3 consecutive years. And then we had Dr. Pigman one year, Representative Santiago, and Representative Ramon Alexander, and just never got any movement in the Senate. We've been having a lot of conversations with the Senate
I
this
was
summer.
just going to say, Senate President Kathleen Passidomo.
Actually, they're interesting. I've been working with their office, and the product we have, it's not their priority, but they've been very instrumental in helping us get to a palatable bill where they'll be willing to at least entertain it. Senator Burton was very supportive when she was in the House. She actually voted in favor of
Interesting.
it. So we're interested to see what happens this year in the Senate. I don't want to speak out of turn as if members have
Over
given
and
me their
under
endorsement.
of it passing this year?
I always give my bills 100%. So Senators,
That's why
Corey
you're
Simon-
so good.
So Corey Simon's our sponsor in the Senate, Gallup Franklin in the House. These both represent areas where there's a dire need, right? And then with Senator Simon representing Jackson County,
Sure.
he sees the need.
Sure.
He represents Taylor County. So we're interested and excited about that, and let the fun begin.
Okay, and one other thing you said you're working on is school
Yes.
choice?
So yesterday, last week, HB 1403, which is basically, last year HB1 was the Speaker's top universal school choice bill. Usually do something that bill gets to do a glitch bill. So 1403 is really coming back in and clarifying some things. So I'm involved in that one. I represent a virtual company called Stride for virtual education, full-time private virtual education. And so there's some pieces in that bill, at least Section 7 of that bill is in regards to that. Also represents Step Up for Students. And so the
Right.
scholarships.
How are they doing? Because Ryan Daly, my colleague, wrote a story about how they were overwhelmed with this because they're functionally like, I don't want to say that we've outsourced the Department of Education, but in a certain sense, we have outsourced the Department of Education, and Step Up for Students is the main vendor or third-party organization that's handling these vouchers.
So statute creates what they call SFOs.
Right.
And so Step Up and AAA are the two.
What's
right
an
now.
SFO?
That is the
Financial
institution.
Right.
And so Step Up is the larger of the two. They
Right.
definitely deal with more children. I would brag that the system at Step Up makes it possible for them to have more children. They're doing well. Now listen, HB1 had an overwhelming response. Right. I think everything the speaker desired for it to do, it's been doing. It was overwhelming response from the interest, and so there was. Initially, there probably was a lot of concern, right, that was being
Right.
reported about as far as people not getting their payments and things of that nature. All that's been addressed. This 1403 actually will provide more clarity. It's still a work in progress. No bill that gets filed finishes the way it looks when it gets started. So there's still work being done. But ultimately, the ultimate goal is to make sure that families and schools are able to get payment when it's due, make sure their children are able to have their education funded as the full intent is supposed to be. And so, again, it's a clarifying bill. It's nowhere near the same size as last year's bill. No one should expect that. But when this bill is done, it will still bring clarity, and the intent of the speaker last year will still be fulfilled.
Well, Derrick, I'm very interested in all of these issues, and as you can see by me interrupting you constantly. One thing before you go,
Yes.
You're also a reverend?
Yeah, I pastor a local church as well. Yeah.
Which is your church? You give a shout out to your
Yeah,
church.
happily. So our pastor church, we started it 13 years ago. It's called Bible-Based Church. We planted it in August of 2010. And so I'm a full-time pastor at that church along with lobbying. So I'm an anomaly, right? And I tell people that pastoring helps me deal with legislators and lobbyists and people in the halls of the Capitol. But I'm grateful for both.
It can be a very dark place.
It can be a very dark place.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Derrick,
I'm
and
honored.
I can't wait to have you on for a whole session. And thank you for being a listener.
Tell me when. I'm a big fan.
Thank you. Joining us now on a deeper dive is Devin Stephenson, president of Northwest Florida State College. You've got a lot to talk about, don't you?
Dara, it's great to be with you today, and yes, we do.
Yes, thank you
We're
for
excited.
joining me.
Yes.
Yeah. And we just chatted real briefly before you sat down here with me. You want to start with the Triumph?
Sure.
let's-
That's, one of the things we're most proud of is that our work with Triumph Gulf Coast in achieving some major advancements in grant acquisition. Over $32 million in grant acquisition. Right now, we have our institution has received more Triumph Gulf Coast dollars than any other educational entity. And
Let me just interrupt you and remind our listeners the Triumph Fund was created by what was then BP
Yes.
at the time after the oil spill, and I can't even remember the year of that. I know it's over 10 years ago
It is.
because I was working for the Palm Beach Post at
That's
the
right.
time, and I went over and I
Yeah.
lived in Pensacola
Sure.
for many months.
It was a Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and so as a result of that, the legislature created a $1.5 billion pot of money that's coming to the 8 disproportionately affected counties along the Emerald Coast. And that is actually proportioned out $100 million a year over 15 years. So it's phenomenal economic recovery dollars. The board does a great job vetting projects, and we have 3 of those. One has created what we call our Walton County Works program that includes cybersecurity, welding, construction trades, and then we stood up a brand new aviation center of excellence with over $5 million Triumph Gulf Coast Award. And it's located in Crestfield, Florida, and it's phenomenal, and you need to come see it.
I want to come see it
And
because
then
I
the last
love
thing,
it over there.
The last award was $21.8 million to double the capacity of our nursing program and create a nursing center of excellence. So we're moving from 96 students graduating a year to over 180 through that grant, as well as state grants that we've mishmashed together to create almost $40 million in an initiative to double the capacity and meet the workforce needs of Northwest Florida.
We have a huge nursing shortage in Florida. I've spoken with the Senate president about that. I know that's an issue that's near and dear to her heart, is the healthcare workforce shortage, that
It
they're
is.
working on efforts to try to bolster that workforce.
So right now, we know that by the year 2035, we'll have a shortage of 60,000 nurses in the state of Florida.
That's crazy.
I know it's crazy. So we're trying to get ahead of that. But I can tell you that this new bill that Senator Pasadomo is championing, 7016 Senate bill, that was introduced by Senator Harrell and Senator Burton,
Yes.
has a lot. It's a policy package that creates sort of a groundswell of opportunities to help with healthcare. And the title of the bill is Live Healthy.
That's her thing.
Live Healthy. And so one of the things that we're really interested in is the line fund. The legislature created the line and the pipeline fund 2 years ago. And so they're going to expand that, and that comes to both secondary and post-secondary institutions to upskill the labor force and upscale the opportunity for output into the workforce in the regions throughout Florida.
And so, can you give me an example of how this might be in real life, so our listeners can understand what this bill might do?
Sure. So, in our particular case, the Triumph Gulf Coast, we decided that not only is the shortage an issue, but the outdated, the antiquated facilities could not accommodate the growth that was going to take place in our nursing program. So a lot of the dollars are infrastructure.
Okay.
So we mishmashed about $13 million in PICO dollars,
Right.
public education capital outlay dollars, to renovate this Center of Excellence for Nursing. Now what's unique is that the training is not just hands-on training. It's not just lecture. It's not highly engaged classrooms, but it is also augmented and virtual reality that we're putting into the training. And the reason we're doing it is for really two reasons. Number one, we know that students that have augmented and virtual reality training in nursing can expedite themselves through the process. They learn faster. It's that kinesthetic, tactical energy that comes as a result of that training. And the other thing is they make fewer mistakes when they're working on you and I, Dara, in the healthcare setting. As a result, 40% fewer mistakes if they've had the augmented and virtual reality training versus just the type of regular training we've done for all these years.
Wow.
So we're adding technology into the pieces of this training, and we're not stopping there. We're going to embed it into radiography, physical therapist assistant, medical lab technician. But I think the beautiful part for us, and the thing that Triumph Gulf Coast has done for us, they've given us $2 million to create our own simulations through virtual reality. And we're engaging with a company out of Miami called Xennial, and these will be proprietary in nature, that they're creating them for our faculty, but then they're going to be available to other entities.
Like Gatorade.
Like Gatorade. I love Gatorade, don't you? So exactly, that's what we're going to do.
So you can monetize it.
Yes, that's exactly what we're doing.
Wow.
So we've tried to think entrepreneurially and innovatively in this regard, but I think the beautiful piece is that we're not just using one source. Our institution has skin in the game. We're using Triumph Gulf Coast dollars. We're using PICO dollars, as well as legislative money through pipeline and the line fund. So
that's
it's a
really
mishmash.
interesting. That's fascinating. I've never even heard of that. I'm so excited that you're sitting down with me today
You
to tell
have
me
to
about
come
that.
over and see it.
I'm going to, because another story I'll save for another time. But I want to head over that way,
Good.
for sure.
We'd love to have you.
Other legislative priorities coming out of the session, the 60-day session?
Yes, we're very interested in manufacturing in our area and upscaling manufacturing. Of course,
So, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you again, but I just had Beth Cicchetti, the executive director of the Florida Economic Development Council.
Ah, yes.
And so she was talking about
Yes.
efforts to draw manufacturing, to bolster manufacturing in the state. So that feeds right into what you're talking about.
And so what we've done is we've locked arms with both the Okaloosa and Walton County Economic Development Alliances, because they're the ones who recruit industry, and they want us at the table when they're bringing industry in, because they want to know, what can the institution do to provide training to new workers, and then how do we do incumbent worker customized training for these different entities? We just landed a significant manufacturing facility in our Shoal River Ranch gigasite, which is just north of us in Crestview.
Okay.
And they're going to manufacture electronic transformers. When they came to town for the first time, they sat in my conference room so that we as an institution could say, we're locking arms with you, we're locking arms with EDA, and we'll provide the training that you need to bring these 300 workers.
That's
300
nice,
workers,
nice.
and it's really, really a great start for us. But you know, we have the aviation manufacturers in that area. We have Lockheed, Boeing, Lockheed Martin,
Right.
Airbus is there, S&T out of Pensacola. So we believe that our calling and our work is it's like chicken and egg, you know, which comes first? You got to provide the training to be able to attract. And so that's what we're going to do.
I just find that so interesting because, as I've said, speaking with some of the other guests today, you know, I've been talking with people in the business community for 30 years now, and workforce, education. That's been the mantra among the Council of 100,
Right.
the Chamber, other business groups, and and I know that it's also priority of the governor as the workforce training
That's right.
initiatives. What is, other than so you've got nursing and now this, I guess this is a tech, not necessarily a tech, but a feeder for the tech industry, this component
Yeah,
manufacturer.
It's manufacturing component.
Right.
Absolutely. So that you know, we've been doing this work for some time. We have a phenomenal machining lab and a machining program, but we also have, according to the American Welding Society, the #1 welding program in America. And our director of the welding program was just named as Director of the Year by the American Welding Society.
Really?
Yeah.
I always wanted to learn how to weld.
Well, our welders make a starting salary of $125,000.
See, I knew I wanted to be a
You're in
welder.
the right frame of mind about it.
Right, right.
So they know, but that's a challenge, Dara, because here we get these students, and most of them have made, minimum wage?
Sure.
And so now they're in a new era where they have 150,000 or more coming in, and they don't know how to manage that money. So the challenge for us is providing financial literacy. So what I did is I brought the Small Business Development Center out of UWF on campus to provide training to those students on how are you going to manage $150,000? How do you budget for that? How do you spend for that? I thought it was real interesting. I had a student in the college a few weeks ago, and I was walking around. You know, I still believe in management by walking around. And that student was sitting.
Hey, there's
talking.
nothing like good old-fashioned shoe leather.
No, that's right. And so he was talking with one of our people. I walked in. I said, Xavier, it's great to see you. Tell me, how much money did you make last year? He said, I made $150,000 last year as a
Wow.
welder. And he said, I've been figuring something. He said, if I could bring some people on with me and form an LLC business myself, I could make $250,000 next year.
Wow.
So I'm here to learn how to do small business accounting. I want to know how to set this up. And so we're providing that training as well to those postgraduates that come to us. We're finding the same thing with nursing. You know, many of them are minimum wage. They come to us, they'll get a signing bonus of $15,000, $20,000.
They're making coin now.
$80,000 a year.
Yeah.
They need to know, how am I going to manage that kind of money? So it's created some real challenges for us.
Wow. I know that's been something that legislators have wanted to do in high school, start financial
Right.
literacy
Right.
at the younger grades.
Yes.
So this comes, and so for the legislative session, that is a priority
Yes.
to expand the financial literacy,
That is a piece, but really the manufacturing program
the
itself.
manufacturing program.
Yes, in addition to that, we believe that current places of business, for example, Okaloosa Gas, Florida Power and Light, and other large entities like that are coming to us saying, we need our leadership trained. They need to know how to do what they're doing in this changing time. And so
So management, you mean?
management, exactly. So we're doing that kind of work on a weekly basis with these large corporations for their leadership. And here's what they're telling
Like
us.
leadership academies.
That's right. And so it might run a week, and then they're off for 3 or 4 weeks, and they come back for another week. What we know is this. The former modality of leadership training to be a transformational leader or a transactional leader is not what's important today, as much as being a change leader.
Right.
Managing and navigating what we call the white waters of change.
It's so different now.
Yes.
I mean, these young people that are starting these businesses that are making bazillions of dollars, they're just, I mean, it's a cliche to say thinking outside the box, but
You're right.
they have ideas
Yep.
and they're not afraid to implement them.
They're very aggressive. And here's what I tell our folks, and I've tried to surround myself with a diverse cabinet of leaders of all generations, because I don't want yes people. I want people that will challenge my thinking as a baby boomer, and to help me realize what is the best solution. And we do it all together. You know, I've often said it's not about me, but if you take that M in me and flip it to a W, it becomes we. And that's most important. We do it as a team, and we work together and do our solution seeking in that regard. And our team comes up with some of the best stuff. I may throw out an idea, it could get killed or it could get modified, but I'm not touchy about that because I don't care who gets the credit.
How about artificial intelligence?
Oh.
How is that affecting you guys?
You know, I will tell you that several months ago, our CIO came to my office and said, look, we'd like to put Chat GPT on your computer and let you play with it. And I said, look, that's pretty dangerous for me. I'm not sure about that, but I've been dabbling with it, and I'm going to tell you it's scary. But we are looking now at standing up a complete AI program. In our cybersecurity program now, we're adding certification for AI as a part of it. So within 1.5 years, we've already modified our cyber program to include AI because of its impact. And in talking with my Vice President for Academic Affairs last week, it looks like we may just go ahead and stand up an AI program completely separate because of the demand.
Wow.
You're seeing it everywhere. It's being used on Facebook, Twitter, everywhere is using AI. And we need to learn how to use it. And here's most important, we need to learn how to manage it in our environment.
Well, you also need to be able to identify whether kids are using it, or not kids,
Yes.
but students are using it.
That's right.
To cheat on their work.
That's right. And that's a daily task. So we stood up a Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning. We call it the CITL. And it is for the purpose of helping faculty do a better job of engaging the classroom, as well as being able to determine if there's plagiarism going on. And we know about that in the news media and higher ed in the last few
Oh
days,
my
don't we?
goodness, haven't we?
Yeah. So we're trying to take the necessary steps to make sure that we counter any of these kind of issues that would come up.
And that is just fascinating.
Yes.
And so about how many students do you all have?
We serve 10,000 students annually. So on any given semester, we'll have 5,700 students. But over a period of a year's time, we serve over 10,000.
In which counties?
Okaloosa and Walton County. So we serve what we call the Emerald Coast of Destin, Fort Walton Beach, 30A, Seaside,
Right.
those areas. And so we have 7 sites, 2 campuses, and 5 instructional sites scattered across those 2 counties.
So if you were visiting a high school, encouraging kids to come to your college, and someone asked you, I don't know what career I want to go into, what's the best career for me to pursue? What would you tell them?
Well, the first thing I would say is don't have any preconceived idea as to what works and what doesn't work, because things are changing so rapidly. And here's what we know. A general degree, just a general bachelor's degree, is going to yield you no more of a good job than not going to school, than just earning a high school diploma. Particular skills that are driven into workforce programs that are relevant, and here's what I say, what you need to look for is high wage, high demand jobs. And you can do that outside of a 4-year degree. Mm-hmm. And I give a perfect example. My daughter, we told my daughter, she said, I want to go into healthcare. And so I said, all right. She said, I want to go into nursing. So she did the associate degree nursing program at our institution. And then she went on and got her Bachelor of Science degree so that she could do management in the hospital. And then last year, she graduated with a graduate degree as a nurse practitioner. Now you can imagine what she's making.
Oh my goodness.
As a nurse practitioner.
Right.
But she started at a place that really yielded her probably an $80,000 a year job as a nurse, as an ADN, working ICU as a charge nurse. But now those little steps have netted her the opportunity of a lifetime with strong job security to provide primary care and do extremely well.
I just want to take a point of personal privilege and brag about state colleges.
Thank you.
I am a product of what
Yes, you
was
are.
formerly known as Broward, the school formerly known as Broward Community College,
Yes.
and I was a young single mother working 2 jobs, and I don't know what I would have done without the night, the courses and the affordability, and I think they are the best bargain in town. So I just want to tell you.
I'm sold. So I started my career in the 2-year college system. And I've had opportunities to work in state offices. I've had the opportunity to move to the university level. But you're right. The state colleges and the community colleges, that's where the difference is made. You can see it. You can see the transformation. You can see it in their eyes. Just a few weeks ago, we had commencement. And as one student walked across she was a non-traditional student. Mm-hmm. She walked across and she started weeping, just weeping. And I thought myself, those are tears. Those are tears that represent a lot of arduous, rigorous work, probably some times that she wished she'd have stopped and couldn't make it. But they not only represent the journey, they also represent the promise of a brighter future. Mm-hmm. And so I realize what I do is because of that difference that we make in students' lives. It's all about that for me as a president. I want to make a difference in students' lives. And that's the greatest reward for me.
Well, I can't wait to have you back on to tell me more about your AI program. I'll tell you what I would tell students if they were asking me what career to pursue. HVAC and welding.
Yeah.
That's what I'd tell them.
You're smart. You're smart.
So,
go try to hire a plumber.
oh
or
my
an
gosh,
electrician,
or plumber. Yeah, all-girl plumbing. I think an all-girl plumbing company would be very successful.
We have an HVAC company in our area. All the trucks are pink. It's a woman-owned.
Okay, see, I think that's
so
it.
see,
You got to have a shtick too.
You gotta have a shtick, that's right.
Devin Stephenson, president of Northwest Florida State College. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I can't wait to talk with you again.
Thank you, Dara. It's my honor. Believe me.
I snagged Lee Moffitt, former House Speaker Lee Moffitt, one of my OGs. Lee Moffitt is the founder of the H. Lee Moffitt Cancer Center. I want to make sure I get this name right. Am I getting it right, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, the largest cancer center in Florida.
The largest cancer center in Florida. I can't tell you how many of my friends and people I know have received treatment there and are very grateful for the services they received. So thank you for what you have done. Tell me, you want to talk a little bit about the Moffitt Cancer Center?
Sure. The Cancer Center has just celebrated its 38th anniversary. We have the second highest incidence of cancer in the United States in Florida.
Wow.
And the center has grown to meet the demand for top quality cancer services in the state of Florida. We see more cancer patients than any other cancer center in the state, and we are ranked as one of the top 10 cancer centers in the United States.
So if you have cancer, you know where you want to go, listeners.
Our outcomes are better than any other center in the Southeast.
You know, you founded that cancer center for a reason. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, when I was first elected to the legislature many years ago, several of my friends, all about the same age, ended up having cancer. And back then, there was no first-class cancer center in Florida, so they all had to go out of state, be away from their families to get the best cancer care. They all died within a year, and it hit me very heavily. And I decided that one of the things I wanted to do when I was Speaker was to make sure that Florida had a first class cancer center so that people would not have to leave the state of Florida to get the best care.
That was almost 40 years ago now. Does it feel like that long now?
Seems like just yesterday.
And I still see you walking around in the Capitol. You come up here every year. You're advocating not only for the Moffitt Cancer Center, but I'm wondering, like, what is it? Things have changed so much. Like, we could start with how confusing it is to even get an elevator in the Capitol. That's a big change. But what do you think about what year were you Speaker?
I was Speaker 82 to 84.
82 to 84, so that was a minute ago. So what is the biggest change that you think you've seen over the past 40 years?
Oh, I don't know. The more things change, the more they remain the same.
Really?
Yeah. I've always been treated very well by the legislature. Fortunately, or unfortunately, I should say, just as many Republicans get cancer as Democrats. So there are certain issues that transcend politics. And cancer is one of those issues.
Healthcare certainly is. As somebody who has a chronic illness, I'm a type 1 diabetic. I've had it for over 40 years, so I totally get how healthcare is front and center for many, many people. I want to ask you if you have any legislative priorities this year. Is there anything front and center this year for you?
Well, again, the legislature has been very generous to the Cancer Center over the past 3 decades, and but we need to grow. Florida is growing at 1,000 people a day. The demand for our services is overwhelming us, and so I'm up here each year to try and get the legislature to understand how important it is to continue its investment in our research facilities as well as our treatment facilities. And the legislature's been very generous.
Lee Moffitt, he's giving me the hook sign. I was just leaning in to say thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I tried to snag you last year and you wouldn't have any of it, and we coaxed you into sitting down with us for a few minutes. It's always a pleasure to see you, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
We are back right now with Keith Koenig, the chairman of the Florida Chamber of Commerce and the founder of City Furniture. He is a big deal, I was told, and I believe it. So, Mr. Koenig, thank you very much for taking a few minutes to join me here at the Florida Chamber's 2024 Legislative Fly-In.
I'm delighted. It's an honor.
I don't know much about City Furniture. I don't know if do you have any well, you're the chairman of the chamber, so maybe you can talk a little bit. We'll have Mark Wilson on in a bit, but maybe you can talk about as a business owner what you hope to get out of the legislature this session.
First, to put a little bit in context, we started our business. My late brother and I started our business in the early 70s.
Wow.
And we became partners after he opened a little Waterbed store. So we started a little...
Oh my gosh, I remember. Whatever happened to Waterbeds?
It was called Waterbed City. Maybe you remember
I
that.
remember it because I grew up in Broward County.
Okay,
but
well,
what happened to where did they go?
I still sleep on a waterbed.
No, you don't.
Of course I do. Yeah, they're really good. And we sell thousands of other mattresses every month, but
you can still buy them.
No. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt your origin story, but
So we started this little waterbed company and grew, and then we had to convert from waterbeds to furniture, and it's just a good story that when I look back over the last 50 years, I mean, it's the American free enterprise system worked for us, and I'm now in a position where I can help spend some of my time to make sure that the future of Florida is as good as it can be. So I'm involved with the Florida Chamber. I'm the chair.
I have to tell our younger listeners that waterbeds were really a big, huge thing back in the day.
We sold a lot of waterbeds.
Yeah, and I remember City Furniture. I remember seeing the sign, the big sign.
Remember Waterbed City?
I remember Waterbed City.
Yeah, we were a big deal back then, but we're now 10 times what the size. No, we're 20 times the size we were when we were at our best year at Waterbed City. So, you know, free enterprise changes. One door closes, another one opens.
Well, we know we have a very business-friendly legislature nowadays, and so I'm wondering if there's anything in particular that you're hoping to see over the next 60 days.
First, we have to really compliment our legislature and the Florida Chamber for the past session. It really fixed a lot of real problems that we had in the state. Now we can get focused on continuing to improve that, but working on other priorities. For me, a big one is early childhood and third grade reading levels. And we're below where we need to be for kids' preparation going into third grade to be able to read at level. And there's a lot of discussion about opportunities to be able to improve that. So that's a big priority for me, on top of continuing to improve the lawsuit abuse reforms that we have and some other relatively important but already underway priorities.
You know,
workforce housing, mental health, etc., safety.
The workforce housing is a big deal. I had physical therapy the other day, and I was talking to my physical therapist, and she's getting her master's in occupational therapy at FAMU, and she said she's going to have to go home and move back in with her parents in Tampa because she's got to pay off her student loans. She can't afford rent even, and I know that the legislature took allocated a bunch of money towards Live Local last year, but it is really, I don't know how young people are entering the housing market nowadays.
Yeah, it is expensive, and especially in South Florida, it's getting more expensive. So it's not just the government funding, there's also ways to be able to improve zoning, to be able to increase some density, and we're getting some mass transit throughout South Florida with Brightline, and building around that allows transportation to become more affordable. So there's a lot of things that are not money so much as regulation and improvements in process.
I wanted to go back to the early childhood education and the reading issues. I've been doing this for quite the while now, and every time I talk to business leaders, the Council of 100, the Chamber, for the past 30 years, educating the workforce has been sort of the number one issue for business leaders. And what's the deal? How can we not get our arms around that?
Well, first of all, the state of Florida education, all the way through higher education, is well regarded across the entire country. So it's not like we're falling behind. U.S. News and World Report voted the Florida College University program the best in the country in terms of quality and value. And it's not about money, because a lot of other states spend just more money on everything that we do. Florida's larger than New York, but Florida's larger population than New York, but New York's budget, taxations, and their expenditures are more than twice what Florida's are. Florida's smart, we spend the money wisely, and we can always improve. But some of this is more about changing the paradigm of education. In the past, when I went to school, I went to kindergarten, and I went up through public school and bingo. Now, it's important for kids to get pre-K and VP pre-K. So we're looking at ways that we can improve pre-K and VP pre-K so more kids, especially those where mom and dad are not home reading to them every night, get better care.
Yeah.
And they not only that, but expanding the hours so mom and dad, if one of the parents is staying home to take care of the kids right now, they could go into the workforce and earn a better life for their family. So expanding the scope from just education to also providing daycare for mom and dad would be an innovative way for us to move forward.
It's very expensive.
Very expensive.
It is a prohibitive factor in employment for many young families.
It is so expensive, but just think, if we've got school choice now. So what does that happen? Public school enrollment is down. They have capacity. The superintendents I've talked to have interest in growing their attendance back in their schools because they have to compete. So they have facilities, they have capacity, they have interest. How can we do it affordably so that kids get a better education and are prepared for kindergarten? Mom can go to work and have coverage for enough of the kid so that they have a quality day, but that she can get a meaningful job. So there's some intersection of opportunity there. It's not going to be easy.
Well, that's very interesting. Thank you very much. Anything else we should be keeping our eyes on for the next 2 months?
We're going to continue to make improvements that are going to drive down property insurance rates over time, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen overnight.
I just got my car insurance. I drive a 5-year-old car. I have never had an accident. I've never filed a claim. My car is 5 years old. It has 20,000 miles on it. I don't drive anywhere. And my insurance, I just got the bill yesterday, literally, went up $500. $500. That's the car insurance. I'm just knocking on wood that my homeowner's insurance gets renewed in March.
Well, when you're driving around and you look at a billboard, do you ever see a billboard where it says, "I love my attorney," or "call 1-800," etc.? One of the costs, not the only cost, but one of the costs is frivolous lawsuit abuse. Do you know in the state of Florida, we have bad actor attorneys focusing on trying to take advantage of windshield cracks. If you had a crack in a windshield, the cost to repair that is about $700.
Right.
And your insurance company will pay for it. But there are perpetrators that are trying to say, "Let me take that on for you," and the lawsuit that goes to the insurance company adds an enormous cost. 90+% of windshield litigation in the United States happens in the state of Florida. That's just one of many small examples that the Florida Chamber is trying to level the playing field so that intelligent people that have a real claim get it covered, but we don't add excess cost by having a lawsuit where it shouldn't be done.
The property insurance is a real issue. People are afraid to file a claim. They're being dropped right and left. Do you think, the legislature did a bunch of things, and I don't have them right in front of me, but they tried to address the issue over the past 2 years, and I believe they've said that it will take a couple of years to stabilize the market. They put more money into reinsurance. Do we think that there's anything more that needs to be done, or do we need to take a pause and kind of let this play out for a little bit?
No, we've done much of what needs to be done. The state legislature had the courage to have a 1 in 100-year session where they got important improvements done. To give you a perspective on property insurance, Florida has 8% of the property insurance policies in the U.S. But Florida in 2022 had 76% of the litigation.
I've heard that statistic before, yeah.
92% of the revenues that came from that litigation went to attorneys. Relatively little went to the property owner. That's a cost that's borne in the system. It also chases intelligent insurance companies away from Florida because they can underwrite hurricanes and storms. They cannot underwrite, in other words, forecast the cost of litigation that is unexpected or abusive. We're trying to level the playing field so that that goes away, so that you just get insurance companies back to the state of Florida, off of Citizens Insurance, and be able to have a more normalized market like the rest of the country.
Is there concern in the business community about the property insurance and property taxes with the values of property, climbing in Florida and some areas just astronomically? My daughter lives in St. Petersburg, and she's like, good thing she bought when she did. So is there a concern among business owners that their workforce is going to be priced out of the market?
Well, I think
because of those two things.
You've got two issues. You said property insurance and property taxes.
Right.
So as properties go up in value, taxing is not something we're focused on at the Florida Chamber.
Okay.
Property insurance is a function of severity and frequency of claim. So we can't control severity. Speaker Renner just talked about it. He says we can't control frequency of claim. We can control severity, and they're going to be incenting improvements like hardening your house,
right.
Improving and providing incentives so that you will invest in making a more storm-hardened facility. What the Chamber has focused on and the legislature has largely improved dramatically are reducing frivolous lawsuits that add cost to property insurance claims. Mm-hmm. And there's countless examples I've heard from countless insurance companies of frivolous claims. But I can tell you one, not so much on property, but on automobile.
Yes.
We're City Furniture. We deliver furniture. We have 200 plus delivery trucks.
Wow.
We have 450 guys that deliver furniture and set up furniture every day. About 6-7 years ago, we had two of our guys driving a truck, doing everything right, got rammed by a car that ran a blinking red light. She was cited. Eyewitnesses showed that it was all her fault. Our guys were not at fault. Our truck ran into a tree. One of my guys got hurt badly, recovered. The other guy was minor. Unfortunately, the lady driving the car, her son was in the car, fatality, tragically. But it was all her fault.
Right.
She sued us. And we settled, our insurance company had to settle for close to $1 million. Back then, we had in the state of Florida something called comparative negligence, where if you were 1% negligent by a jury trial, you could be liable for the whole claim. Huh. We changed that this year. I should say the Florida legislature changed that to 51% this year.
Okay, so you have to have the majority at fault.
We had an insurance company tell me he had a policyholder at a railroad crossing that was closed and a train was coming by, got slammed into by a car behind it. They were just sitting there. The car that slammed into them sued and they had to pay because the jury trial said, well, 1%, if you weren't there, it wouldn't happen. That makes no sense. We recently had another, I saw it on video in our store. One of our trucks got a car pulled right in front of us. I saw it on video. They were cited. It was their fault. Because it's now 51% comparative negligence, no attorney would take on that claim. So they're not going to sue us. And we did nothing wrong. Our guys we're driving safely. So that's the kind of improvement. We're not trying to take away anything other than rational.
So then you would think, though, auto vehicle insurance rates would be coming down with that.
So the way the insurance
instead of
companies
going
work-
up by $500.
Well,
like
the way
mine
the
just
insurance
did.
companies work, they have to see the results. But
Okay.
they're all saying, yes, this will, they believe, unless there's ways that these bad actor trial attorneys find some other loophole, we should see claims come down. We should
Okay.
see costs come down. We should see the insurance company and the insurance systems work properly.
Well, I see Lee Moffitt pacing in the background, so I don't know if he's waiting for you.
He's waiting for me.
He
my
put
buddy.
you in the hot seat, so I'm going to take you off the hot seat. Mr. Keith Koenig, thank you, the founder of City Furniture and the chairman of the Florida Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much for joining me today.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
A Deeper Dive with Dara is hosted by Dara Cam, produced by Ryan Daly, and music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs LLC and performed by Ryan Daly and Danny Reyes.